Welcome, football fanatics, to the First and 10 Club with me, your host, Mark D. Well, it's New Year's Eve. I have not started pre gaming to count down to the new year. But before I get to that, we need to talk a little bit about week 17 in the NFL season. So, for most of my viewers, our regular seasons for fantasy football year-long leagues are over. I'm hoping that there's some champions that are out there. Congratulations for those who survived the 2020 COVID year of fantasy football and came away as a champion in their league. It's not an easy task. It was definitely not an easy task this year. So, extra level of congratulations. For those still playing DFS, week 17, always a little bit of a tricky week, and we'll talk about that as we go through the show. So, without any further ado, it's going to be a little bit of a different show this week because, well, things are a little different. So, let's start talking about week 17 and what does it mean. For starters, this year in 2020, and I really still don't understand the correlation for it, but the NFL made this argument that because of COVID in the year, they were going to expand the playoff field to 7 teams. And you had your purists in the beginning that were a little upset about it, and they made their arguments, and I understand that. They said they were watering down the field. Well, if you look at what's going on in the NFL right now, I don't think it watered down the field at all. What I do think it did was put a lot more emphasis on that single home field advantage bye week, which is whoever's the one seed. Only one team gets that week off, and sometimes that just can make all the difference. So let's wrap up the regular season in week 17, all divisional matchups. So everybody's playing somebody from their division, and there's so much to be decided yet. And that's what makes this great. And I think it even goes to show you, we'll talk about when we go through here, even with the expanded playoff field, there's going to be some broken hearts come Monday morning. Let's start in the AFC. Okay. Well, the only thing we know for sure so far in the AFC is the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs are the number one seed. There's nothing that can change that. They are the de facto number one by, a large margin. And right now, it looks like a dogfight for the second seed. But all that really matters is it gives you that second home field game if you win your first one. It gives you a potential. That's all it really comes down to. So 2020, what could be more of 2020 than what happened to the Cleveland Browns? Because the Cleveland Browns, in all honesty, should be sitting in the playoffs right now. They should be there. It should be done. It should be a done deal. But the Browns had COVID issues last week. They had no wide receivers on their field. Literally, the wide receivers that were playing were right off the practice squad. And what did it lead to? Well, it led to a second win in a row for the New York Jets. Dare I say it, is Adam Gase trying to make a Gase case, to keep his job in 2021? Could the Jets be that stupid? I mean, they already gave up the number one pick in the NFL draft by winning games and lost out on potentially one of the greatest quarterbacks in college football history, and one of those can't miss picks, and Trevor Lawrence. So what could be more Jetish than keeping Gase around for another year? Could it happen? Yeah, maybe, But what we're talking about right now are teams that matter, teams that actually have a shot to make to the playoffs, and that is the Cleveland Browns. Now, the downside about this game is the Cleveland Browns have to win. They have to win to get in, and they're still dealing with COVID issues. Their facilities have been shut down for 2 days in a row because of COVID issues, so they're not practicing, they're not getting ready for it, and they're facing a Pittsburgh Steelers team. Pittsburgh Steelers got off the hide, the schneid, I should say. They beat the Indianapolis Colts last week, which complicates things for the Colts this week. Makes it even more interesting. The Steelers did not drop 4 in a row. I actually thought there was a pretty good chance it could happen, and to be honest, the Colts looked like they were going to do it. And then Big Ben put together a hell of a comeback in the second half. They pull out the win. Steelers are in, and Tomlin decides he is resting players. Big Ben is definitely out. There's probably going to be limited roles, limited play for other Steelers on this side of the ball. So what do you get because of that? Well, in most cases, it's just, you get to play the backups. That's a good thing. Except there's this wonderful little layer that maybe some of you guys forgot about. Well, if Big Ben's sitting, that means Mason Rudolph is going to be starting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Does anybody remember a game last year when a heated confrontation led to Myles Garrett swinging a helmet at Mason Rudolph? God, can you script this one any better? 2020, could this be any more Browns 2020 than the fact that not only do they need to win to get in 2020, after losing to the potentially the worst team in football in the Jets, but now you have this underlying storyline where you get Myles Garrett facing Mason Rudolph. I know personally, I can't wait for the first time that Myles Garrett sacks him just to see how that all kind of unfolds. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of emotion there that's going to need to be kept in check. Not to mention that it's a divisional game and two teams that tend to not always like each other. So, enough said about that. Let's get into the fact, like I said, the Chiefs, they've clinched. The Bills, though, however, might be the hottest team in the AFC. As Diggs and Allen are making cases right now that they need to be noticed. Allen absolutely needs to be in the MVP talk. Diggs, if you're going to start putting position players in there, and that's just a conversation for a whole nother day, but if you're putting position players in there like Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams, you've got to put Stefon Diggs in there. Everyone said he was a cancer, that he was this bad teammate in Minnesota. Well, it sure doesn't look that way in Buffalo. As Stefon Diggs is saying, not only, did he have a great season, but he's trying to, I think, voice, his opinion that he might be the top wide receiver in the league. Now, there's other wide receivers that are going to contest that. But it's not like Stefon Diggs' play has not backed it up. So, all right, enough of these three teams. The Chiefs, the Steelers, the Bills, okay, they're in. The Steelers and Bills could flip positions, but that's a minor storyline in my opinion. So you got 5 teams then fighting for 4 spots. Now this gets crazy because the Titans and Colts battle for the division. They're not playing each other though. See, the Titans get the Houston Texans and look for Henry to have a monster week. I'm telling you, a monster week. Because Houston has not shown that they can stop a running back yet. And we're not talking your average run-of-the-mill running back. You're talking about the beast, King Henry, right now, which is on a quest for 2,000 yards rushing. Talk about a dream scenario to try and go after that goal. What's even crazier about this is if Tennessee loses and Indianapolis and Cleveland win, and on top of that, the Ravens and Miami win, Tennessee could actually miss the playoffs. See, the crazy thing is the way this is all unfolded, none of these 5 teams are safe. So, lots to be played for here. And when you're playing daily fantasy, and we're going to get to this later, but when you are playing daily fantasy, it is imperative that you are playing players that have something to play for, something that they're going after. Now, I get it. I absolutely get it that in this week, you can have a team like Tennessee. They've got a lot to play for. But if they're up 35-7 in the fourth quarter, those starters probably are going to get pulled. So that's the nature of the beast this week. But somebody like Henry, somebody like Allen or Diggs are trying to prove something, they're going to see big workloads. So as we talked about, everybody's up in the air. So not only does Indy have to beat Jacksonville, who, let's face it, in suicide leagues knocked a lot of people out in week 1 when they lost to the Jaguars. They're looking for the revenge narrative. Doug Marrone's trying to save his job. You know, these aren't necessarily just rollover games. Baltimore, maybe I'm jinxing them. I'm sorry, Ravens fans. Baltimore might have the easiest path here. Because Baltimore gets to face the Cincinnati Bengals. And man, they're coming off of a high. They won last week. But Baltimore is a little bit of a different animal, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The Bills, they don't have a ton to play for, but they could get the number 2 seed, and they're going to run into the Miami Dolphins. That's going to be an interesting game there because, one, you have the unbelievable secondary, and I'm going to put this out there right now. Not a knock on Josh Allen, not a knock on the Bills. Xavier Howard gets another pick this week. He's making his case to be Defensive Player of the Year. I'm being honest. So, that's your AFC and wrap-up. Wow, a lot to digest. Ton to digest. That's just the AFC. Now, let's get even crazier. Let's go to the NFC. Now, the easy part about this is the Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the New Orleans Saints, and the Seattle Seahawks are in. But that's it. They're in. Everything else is up for grabs. Okay, so let's start with the Packers. The Packers have the easiest path. The Packers play the Chicago Bears, and if they beat the Bears, they're the number 1 seed. That's simple. They're the only team that have 100% control of their destiny when it comes to that. But if the New Orleans Saints and Seattle Seahawks can get some help from Chicago, well, that's where things get a little interesting. See, Seattle becomes the number 1 seed. They get that bye week. If they win, and the New Orleans Saints and the Green Bay Packers lose. So that means the seriously short-handed Carolina Panthers would need to upset the Saints, and Green Bay would need to lose to Chicago. New Orleans, on the other hand, well, they could be the number 1 seed if they win and Green Bay loses. But here's the kicker. In order for them to become the number 1 seed, Seattle has to win. See, it goes into strength of schedule, common opponents, all that crazy NFL tiebreaker stuff, which we don't have enough time on this show for me to break it all down systematically. But if Seattle wins and Green Bay loses, well, then the Saints become the number 1 seed. However, if by some chance the 49ers end up beating the Seahawks and Green Bay loses and New Orleans still wins, Green Bay retains that number 1 seed. It's crazy. And that's just talking about the number 1 seed in the NFC. Let's get to the more interesting games, which are the wild cards. So Tampa Bay is guaranteed a wild card. Now, they do have something to play for because they are playing for the 5th spot and the chance to play the NFC East. And stay with me, we'll get to that in a second. But let's talk about the other 2 wild cards. So the other 2 wild cards, there's 3 teams that have a chance at them. And that is the Arizona Cardinals, the Los Angeles Rams, and the once hapless Chicago Bears. This team lost 6 games in a row, but yet are still hanging on. So the Cardinals, it's pretty simple for them. They have to win. If they win, they're in. If they lose, they're out. So that really kind of makes it easy. But if the Cardinals win, it gets a little complicated here. So if the Cardinals win, they're in. If Chicago wins, they're in. Obviously, if the Rams win, they're in. So it's pretty simple. If you win, you're in. However, and by the way, not all 3 teams can win because the Cardinals play the Rams. The interesting thing about it is if Chicago loses, they still get in if the Cardinals win. See, that's where it gets a little tricky. So the Rams legitimately have to win, or they need help from Green Bay. Because obviously, Chicago, they're playing, they want to get into here, but they have a path to make it without winning their game against Green Bay. So the Cards are going to have a lot of extra fans this week, is what it really comes down to. And then we get to the worst division in football this year, the NFC East. Now, the interesting part about it is it comes down to Week 17, and I think, don't quote me on this, but if I remember correctly, way back, early in the season in one of my shows, I kind of predicted this. When things start to go awry in the NFC East and nobody could win a game, I said it was going to come down to Week 17. Well, the interesting thing is the Eagles can do nothing but play spoiler. They have no chance at making the playoffs. They've been eliminated. However, the simple part here is if the Washington football team wins their game, they're in. They win, they're in. Straightforward, simple. If they lose, well, and don't get me wrong, all the Giants fans, all the Dallas fans, they're going to be Eagles fans this week, because if the Washington football team, almost said it, but I didn't, if the Washington football team loses, well, then the winner of the Dallas and Giants game, they win the division. And they get to host a playoff game. Now, the NFL flexed the Washington Philly game to Sunday Night Football. That's the last game of the season. So the last game of the season is going to determine the playoffs. So whoever wins between the Giants and the Cowboys, you better believe they're going to be watching that game intently. Now, how does this all happen? How does this all come to play? Well, before we get to that, I want to address one thing in regards to the Washington football team. Dwayne Haskins, our former first-round draft pick, he's only been with the team 2 years. Gone. Cut. Now, I know that I have spoken out publicly about supporting the kid and doing everything you can to help him, and I did. I think in certain aspects he was given a raw deal, but ultimately what led to him being cut came down to maturity issues. He had maturity issues in college. I wasn't a huge fan of the draft pick when the Redskins, because it was the Redskins at that time, when the Redskins drafted Dwayne Haskins, I wasn't a big fan of it. I was okay with it because we didn't have to move up to get him. He fell to us at our draft position, and okay, there is a ton of raw talent there. But yes, the one major red flag was there was maturity issues. He was young. He had only done it for 1 year in college, and to me, those are some pretty big red flags to draft somebody in the first round, potentially handing them the title of franchise quarterback. Let's face it, you're not taking quarterback in the first round hoping maybe they develop into a franchise quarterback. It's an expectation. Now, that being said, Mr. Haskins, I hope for your sake, because you do have a ton of talent, that somehow, some way, you figure it out. Because right now you have wasted an opportunity as an NFL career. You are going to go down as a bust. I already got on your case, and I talked about how stupid could you be in a year of COVID to jeopardize your team by being selfish. But the fact of the matter is there's just been too many stories about you not doing the work, not doing taking the extra steps to ensure that you're ready to go, to study. And look, for rookies coming out next year, for anybody who happens to see this, if they would, I know I'm a nobody, but I've played sports. I played collegiate sports, and do the work. If you get the opportunity, do the work. It's not a fun ride. It's not like, hey, here's your paycheck. Do the work. Take advantage of the opportunity you are given that so many of us wish we could have had. All right, enough of that. Positive things. We're going to talk about positive things today because I think that's important. Shaky camera. Okay. So we already talked about that. So let's talk about Week 17. Let's talk a little DFS here. So who's out? Well, there's a lot of people out. For starters, Patrick Mahomes, out. I would highly expect the majority of the skill players from Kansas City to not play. Okay? Big Ben, out. Same thing in Pittsburgh. I'd highly expect the majority of the skill players to not play. Dalvin Cook is out. Unfortunately, and my condolences to Dalvin Cook and his family, the passing of his father, he has been ruled out of the game for personal reasons. So our condolences to you, Mr. Dalvin Cook. Cooper Kupp, COVID-19 list. James Robinson, injury. Brandon Ayuk, injury, out. These players are all out. Pay attention to who is in and out this week, especially on teams that have nothing to play for. Guys who are questionable, that have no reason to go out there to risk further injury, probably are not going to play on Sunday. So if you're playing DFS, make sure you are paying attention to who is in and out. Can also give you some sneaky contrarian cheap plays. Keep in mind, Brandon Ayuk is out. Okay? Deebo Samuel is already out. Now, George Kittle is back, so I could see George Kittle having a monster week against a Seattle pass defense that's not the greatest. I also could see a wide receiver by the name of Mike Davis. Remember when Mike Davis came out of nowhere? The 49ers had no wide receivers, and Mike Davis put up a ridiculous stat line. We're facing Seattle here that doesn't necessarily have the greatest secondary. So keep that in mind, DFS players. You want to look for players that are playing for their jobs, coaches that are coaching maybe for their last time or last go-around, last gasp at saving their jobs, people who are playing for playoff positions, awards. That's what you're going after. And there's 4 of them that I'm going to give you right now that I think could make a very big difference this week. So feel free to fire these guys up. And this is all I'm giving you. I'm giving you my 4. 1, quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is going to go off this week. It's happening. Aaron Rodgers, we stated earlier, way back in the year, is pissed off. He is still pissed off about them drafting his eventual replacement. And he is going to prove it this week when he is going to do everything in his power to solidify that he is the MVP of the National Football League in the year 2020. So, fire up Aaron Rodgers. Go for it. Running back, Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is facing the worst rushing defense in the NFL. He is 235 yards, around there, maybe off, little give or take 10 yards. He is that close to 2,000 rushing yards on the season. That is a monumental achievement, and you damn well better believe that King Henry is going after it in 2020. Justin Jefferson, the Minnesota Vikings. Now, he's got a great matchup against Detroit, who can't seem to cover anybody in the passing game right now. They have coaches, they don't have coaches, who knows who's playing quarterback, whatever the situation is, they can't cover in the secondary. Justin Jefferson is going to make a very strong case that the offensive rookie of the year should not be a quarterback, should not be just handed to Justin Herbert, which odds-on favorite right now is him, and he is going to ball this week. And then last but not least, tight end, yeah, there's a bunch of tight ends I could pick for this list, but one that I absolutely believe it's a game that they have to win. It's against a team that can't cover the tight end, and he's been quiet. He's due. We talk about this from time to time, and it's an iffy thing to say a guy is due, but the fact matters he's due. Mark Andrews, if he plays, if he goes this week for the Baltimore Ravens, you got to fire him up. Okay, pay attention, make sure he goes. He has had some lingering injuries. But if he is on that field, Mark Andrews. My bold predictions this week. Okay, let's talk about bold predictions. Okay, first off, I know it's rare. It's week 17. But my bold prediction is that the stars go off in the final week of the season. Players like Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Derrick Henry, Kyler Murray. Okay? These players are going to have big weeks. I don't think it's going to be a limp to get in situation. I don't expect to see big defensive games. I expect to see points this week, and I think these players, the people who got you there, are going to have monster weeks. You're going to see some stat lines this week. My second is a little bit on the sad note. I don't want to talk about sad things this week, but it's just the nature of the beast. A missed field goal is going to cost somebody the playoffs. A missed kick. We'll just call it a missed kick. A missed kick is going to cost somebody the playoffs. Whether it's an extra point to tie the game, whether it's a field goal to win the game, someone, somewhere on some team is going to be sent home because of their kicker. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. It's definitely going to happen this week. That's my bold prediction. It's happening. And then my final bold prediction for the week. Again, I said we don't want to focus on the bad things, but there are some bad things. Monday is commonly known as Black Monday because after this week is when you start to see coaches go. And I think there's going to be 4 more coaching changes to happen on Black Monday or sooner. 4 more coaching changes happen on Black Monday. I do think Adam Gase is done. I think it's a lock. He's out of there. Other coaches that are on the hot seat potentially, Doug Marrone, Anthony Lynn, Nagy, Doug Peterson, Mike Zimmer, I think 4 more happen. So, those are my bold predictions for the week. Let's get into my game picks, my show picks, my lock of the week. And it's tough. I never like picking division games. I try to avoid picking division games. Division rivalries can go either way all the time. But my lock of the week is Tennessee over the Houston Texans. 1, Tennessee needs this game to get into the playoffs. That's 1. 2, they're going to be wearing stickers to recognize the tragic events that happened this past week in the bombing in downtown Tennessee, or Nashville. So they have motivation. There's all kinds of motivation for them this week. And like I said, they are going to be on the back of Derrick Henry. And honestly, this is pretty much what I think is happening right now. I'm pretty sure that you have the defensive line coach of the Houston Texans and the defensive coordinator sitting around in a room going, I don't know what we're going to do. How do we protect our players from eating stiff arms? How do we not end up on SportsCenter this week when Derrick Henry goes over 235 yards in one game? They are going to feed him the ball, and as long as he is making progress, he could honestly carry this ball 40 times in this game. It would not surprise me, because that's the type of player that Derrick Henry is. No way Tennessee loses this game. Lock. Absolute lock. Yeah. Other games I'm picking. Minnesota over the Detroit Lions. I know Minnesota can be horrible at times, but they do have weapons. They have weapons on the defensive side of the ball, though the defense has been atrocious. They do have offensive playmakers. If Alexander Mattison is healthy and cleared to play, he did practice, I would roll with him over Mike Boone, since Dalvin Cook will be out. But you have Adam Thielen, you have Irv Smith. Irv Smith could catch a touchdown this week. Could see that. And then, of course, as we touched base on before, your potential offensive rookie of the year, Justin Jefferson. So I expect Minnesota to put up some points. Kirk Cousins, in a game that means nothing, he thrives in games that mean nothing. He'll put up a crazy stat line, something like that. But I think Minnesota beats Detroit. This is my interesting pick of the week. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. The New York Jets are picking number 2. And in typical Jets fashion, which I said, I think it's going to make it, I think there's going to be a debate. I think there really is. I think there's going to end up being a debate about this. I think the Jets beat the New England Patriots this week. I really do. I'm not saying they blow them out, but I think somehow the Jets pull off a win. They finish the season winning 3 games in a row, and for the love of God, it actually makes the ownership of the New York Jets consider keeping Adam Gase. And I hope for Jets fans' sake that that is not the case. But I do think the Jets win this week. And then my final one, I'm picking the Arizona Cardinals over the LA Rams. So there's no Jared Goff this week. Jared Goff fractured his thumb on his throwing hand. He's definitely out this week. Arizona needs a win to get in. They're healthier. You have no Cooper Kupp. I think Arizona wins this game. So those are my 4 game picks. What'd you think? Do you like them? Not like them? I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong. I don't know. I've had 2 rough weeks. Really have. I got to get back to my winning ways. We were picking 12 right a week, 11, 12 a week. Barely made 500, a little bit better than 500 last week. But so, enough of that. Let's run out the clock. And, in typical New Year's Eve fashion, it's all about clocks today. 2020 feel-good stories. Well, there's 2, in my opinion, that are coming out of the Washington football team franchise. First off, Ron Rivera, congratulations for doing what you came in and said you were going to do, which is create a culture change amongst that team. You've cut players, you have a team buying into your concepts, you're playing better, but the best story of the year is after being diagnosed with cancer, you beat cancer, you've completed your treatments, you're cancer-free, and that's fantastic. That's fantastic to hear. Congratulations, Ron Rivera. And I think you do warrant having some votes for Coach of the Year. I don't think that necessarily you win it, even if you win the division. Now, maybe if you win the division and make a run into the playoffs, maybe it gets a little bit of a stronger case. But, there are definitely going to be some other, tough competition there. But the other feel-good story of the year, Alex Smith. And I've already talked about this. And for the naysayers that are out there, and yes, I see in the chat forums, there are people out there that think this is an abomination, that people think Alex Smith should be the comeback player of the year. Because yes, he came back to play, but have you seen his stat line? And his team doesn't even have a winning record, and so forth and so on. For you imbeciles, you morons that are out there trying to make this palatable, weak-ass argument, if you haven't watched Project 11 yet, the ESPN special, do so. Before you say another word, please make sure you've at least checked that box off. And then come back, because in all honesty, somebody talked about renaming the Comeback Player of the Year award to the Alex Smith Award. This dude is playing with part of his calf missing. You're not talking about coming back from an ACL injury or elbow surgery, because everyone's talking about Big Ben. Surgery. This guy's coming back from a catastrophic injury. One where they were debating having to cut off his leg, sever the man's leg. Countless surgeries, hospital stints. The guy almost died. The fact that he is able to not only make an NFL roster, but come out and play effectively, lead his team to wins. If this vote is not unanimous, there is something that is wrong with the NFL. And it has nothing to do about being a fan of the Washington football team. It has nothing to do with that. This is about celebrating the triumph of human spirit. Any athlete that is out there, anybody that is out there that has suffered any type of injury and struggles to know whether they can go on or they can get past it, should look to Alex Smith for inspiration. That is a role model. We talk about athletes being role models for what? For what reason? Because they have money to throw around, because they have, fame and fortune, and they bring you championships. I think that's just called being a good person. I would hope if you are wealthy beyond means of 99% of the world, that you are willing to share it and pay it forward and do charitable things. But that doesn't necessarily make you a role model, because you go out and you play a good game on the field. It doesn't make you a role model. What makes you a role model is somebody like Alex Smith. Somebody who had all the odds against him, kept a positive outlook, and continued to push forward and met his goals. That's who kids should look up to. That's who adults should look up to. The league. We need to recognize the league. I hate Roger Goodell. I'll be honest. I hate Roger Goodell. He makes my blood boil. He does so many things that drive me nuts. But Roger Goodell, you deserve credit for this year. Not only did you show that the NFL is human, we're all going through this, but somehow, some way, you scratched and you clawed, and yeah, it wasn't all clean and simple all the time. But as of right now, it looks like we're going to get 17 weeks of a regular season in, of an NFL season. All games played. Looks like we're going to go into the playoffs. People are pretty excited about that. And the NFL and the people that make that work, and Roger Goodell, deserve credit for that. They absolutely deserve credit for that. It hasn't been pretty all the time, but they made it work. And in 2020, in a year where so many things could not be figured out, we're still trying to figure some things out. Roger Goodell and the NFL deserve credit for making it work, figuring out a way to make it work. Now, 2020, what can 2020 keep? As we turn the page to a new year, what can 2020 keep? Well, I'll tell you right now, they can keep the damn injuries. I hope we never see another year that is plagued with injuries like we did this year. And it was bad this year. Now, it leveled out as the season went on. But in the beginning of the year, maybe that was the product of not having the typical preseason because of COVID. I don't know. I will never know. It will be debated. But I hope the horrible injury-plagued season that we have faced and seen is behind us. Stays in 2020. And no fans. I pray we never have another situation where we have to go another year without allowing fans to attend sporting events. Not just football, but sporting events. Let's face it, that's what makes sports so damn incredible, is the experience, the energy that the athletes get to feed off of. It sucked not having fans this year. I'm looking forward to being able to attend sporting events in 2021, and I am counting down the days until I can do so. From baseball to basketball, hockey, and of course football. I cannot wait to be a fan amongst other fans in that social environment, back cheering on the teams that we love. And for my final kneel down of 2021, I'm looking forward to the passing of the torch. In 2021, I believe you are going to see the passing of the torch. I think there's a very, very strong chance that you see players say enough is enough and call it a career. It might be Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Frank Gore. Frank Gore, I give you credit because you're still going out there every Sunday and doing it. And you've had a hell of a career and absolutely should be a Hall of Famer. Thomas Davis, this year wasn't his best year, but he's had a very storied career. These are all players that potentially are going to be Hall of Famers, and they're going to pass the torch. You have some amazing quarterbacks that are supposedly coming in this year's draft. Great young crop of players that are waiting to take the helm. You have young players in the NFL this year. The past 2 years, we have rookies that are stepping up. You can tell it's the changing of the guard. And man, that's exciting. I can't wait to see what 2021 will hold. 2021, I ask of you in my final kneel down today, for the love of God, please, for the love of God, writers, somebody out there get together, talk to each other, but somebody give Russell Wilson a damn vote for MVP. He's not going to win it. He doesn't deserve to win it anymore. But someone out there, please give him the vote for MVP so I don't ever have to hear a commentator again talk about the fact that Russell Wilson has never gotten a vote for MVP. And it's nothing against Russell Wilson. I hope he wins one day. He's a hell of a football player. I'm just tired of hearing that stupid narrative. So please, someone, either give me the opportunity to vote. I'd love that. If you want to, please. Because I'll vote for him just so we can get rid of that. Or somebody out there. Someone. God, the Seattle beat writer. Somebody in Seattle has a beat writer or a journalist that has to have a vote. Give it to Russell Wilson just so we can stop saying he's never gotten a vote for MVP. And final, as we count down to the new year, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. I can't wait for the celebration when fans return, when things go back to normal in the NFL, because one thing the NFL can do is they can absolutely put together a hell of a party. You saw what they did for the 100th anniversary. 5, 4, 3. I can't wait for that opportunity. I can't wait to see what they do. That's our show. It's New Year's Eve. Happy New Year, everybody. From the First and 10 Club, I'm your host, Mark D. Subscribe, like, share. We're going to continue doing this. I can't wait to go into year 2. 1. Happy New Year. Let's go football.